Hey everybody, Brian Nemhauser here for the Real Hawk Talk podcast and web show. And we've got Jeff Simmons and Evan Hill. Welcome, guys. Good to see you as always.
Good to see you.
The gun show early on in this show, Evan.
You get paid for this. Woo!
Wow, I wasn't prepared for that so quickly. I have to admit, I made a silly mistake at the jump. I wanted to make everyone jealous about our hookup with Pagliacci Pizza, and so we're going to see which one of the Hawk Blogger crew could get pizza tonight. And I decided to send it to Evan, and instead of sending it at 6:45, I sent it at 7:45. So at some point during this podcast, Evan is going to get up and start pounding pizza into his face for our viewing pleasure. It'll be great. And while I'm mentioning it, if you haven't already, buy an 11-inch pizza, enter the code HawkBlogger, you get an 11-inch pizza for free. It's a sweet deal. So feel free to join Evan if you'd like. All right, Jeff. I'm already off the rails here. Help bring us back. What are we going to talk about? We got some great guests this week. Before they get on, there's so much to go over. Where should we start?
Well, it's always a busy week with the Seahawks, and they're on the bye week. And unfortunately, the start of this week starts with some somber news, as I think Pete Carroll said on Sirius Radio today. And we had already talked about this in earlier episodes. I think Brian was kind of the first one on this story, but it looks like the Seahawks are going to place Cliff Avril, the defensive end, on the IR. And it seems like there's some issues with his neck and his spine, and those are things you don't really take chances with. And there have been some rumors that I think he came out and kind of dispelled about maybe could be the end for him, could be retirement for Cliff Avril, considering where he is at in his career, that he might not be back with the Seahawks next year. So, Brian, Evan, I don't know if you want to have some thoughts on Cliff, who's been one of the more likable Seahawks players since he joined as a free agent. He's been great in the community. He's been great in the locker room. He's been even better on the field. It's kind of a sad story for such a guy you want to root for on this team.
Yeah, just kind of like echoing what people have said on Twitter. The dude is so much his legacy is so much bigger than football that, kind of in the realm of what he does, football is minuscule, at least to me. Like his impact is truly worldwide, whether it's, building houses in Haiti, helping other people, investing in the local community. Cliff is someone I think we're really lucky to have in Seattle right now. So, I mean, he's got to do what's best for him, his health. He's in his early 30s. I think he's 32, 33, something like that. So, with neck issues especially, he's really got to prioritize his health. And I think either way, Seahawks fans should absolutely respect, whatever decision he chooses to make. So.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, Evan. And we're getting some notice that some people are having sound issues. So let us know if other people are having problems with sound. I'm hearing you guys just fine. So we can just talk to each other for a while. Yeah, I've had the chance to meet different media members, different players, different front office people through random, events over time. And one of the things that's always been shocking to me, or it continues to surprise me, is how often the players are humble and better than what you'd expect them to be. I think my expectation was these guys were all going to be big ego, entitled, feel like that they were better than you and didn't have time for you. And Cliff's a perfect example of how wrong I was. Like, he is better in person than he is, in media interviews. He is so genuine. He really wants to do right by people. Each individual he takes time for, he talks to, he looks you in the eye. And the way, as Evan talked about, the way he spends his time off the field, this is a stand-up person. He's a perfect ambassador for what, you'd want a Seahawk to be. And he's also been a fantastic player that's had some of the most impactful plays that led to Super Bowls. Colin Kaepernick, I always like to joke about the Avril strip sack. And the guy was a master at it. And I hope that he is able to come back and play, but it doesn't sound like that's necessarily the likeliest scenario. And if this is the end for Cliff Avril, like I think all Seahawks fans actually should, take some time to hit him up on Twitter and just, share some love. Great guy and a great player. And be interesting to see what the team does now as they turn the page. You've already got hardcore Seahawks fans interested in Braden Jackson, who, had a few pressures in that game. You've got Frank Clark, who's now going to get more snaps and stepped up. And, from a cap perspective, Evan, I don't know if you have anything you can say about, I don't think the retirement affects anything there, but next year, Avril's probably coming off the books, and I think that's over $7 million.
Yeah, I know that's a great point, and lots of people have been hitting me up on that on Twitter. So I did some research before the show, asked some contacts of mine about what his contract actually specifically says. There's these things called IR salary splits, where basically a player will get paid a certain amount if he's seriously injured. And he's put on IR, and he does not have an IR split in his contract. So basically his entire salary is guaranteed for the year via termination pay. That is in the specifics of his contract. So basically this year, him going on IR or retiring would not affect the 2017 cap at all. 2018, they would get some unearned, likely to be earned roster bonuses recouped back for the 2018 season. So without him on the books in 2018, we're talking a lot of cap space, like, I don't know, probably around 40 mil without looking at it. So yeah, that's his impact from a financial perspective.
Sorry, when you said 40 mil, his contract, if you want to take a second and check, the amount of cap space that'll open up next year might be good.
Oh yeah. So let me check real quick. So his cap hit for 2018 is $8 million total. That includes a $7 million base salary, which is non-guaranteed. So $7 million right off the books, right off there. $500K signing bonus, which is already paid to him, and then a $500K roster bonus. So basically, cutting him pre-June 1st, which they would do, before 2018, it would save $7.5 million against the cap. So a good chunk of change.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So other maneuvers, that's one person that's no longer on the roster, at least from an active roster perspective. I don't know if they've officially put him on IR, but it sounds like it's in it. What about other moves? What are the other moves you guys are interested in going on with the Seahawks right now? There's quite a bit of talk for a bye week.
I don't know about you, Jeff, but I'm still praying for Brandon Albert.
Are you following his Instagram every day? Are you like everyone else?
I actually don't have Instagram. I have like these little birds on Twitter that like tweet me updates every 30 minutes when he does an Instagram story or whatever. So I'm not a millennial in the sense that I Insta, if that's the proper terminology.
You are such a millennial. Don't try to escape who you are, man.
I'm an oldie. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, I'm hearing rumors, about him from his stories and stuff. So
share, dude. Spill. Not all of us are on Instagram checking it up.
Well, it sounds like he's still in Seattle.
It's so
strange.
As of when?
What was that?
As of when?
As of today.
And what's he doing in Seattle?
God knows. Everything comes from those videos, whether he's in front of Wingstop or whatever. I don't know. Maybe he's working out. Maybe he's trying to get into some type of shape. I don't know. I don't know how he's kept his shape up in this like mid-season retirement that he's had. I really have no idea what's going on. I'm completely clueless right now. So,
Jeff, what do you think's going on there?
It's such a strange story because I can't think of any other example where a guy in the middle of the season's in Seattle for what? Like throughout the whole bye week. At first, my gut instinct was maybe the bye week was holding the thing up. But it comes out Monday, it comes out Tuesday that there's no deal.
Yeah.
And now he's still lingering around, and it's got to be a money thing. Maybe he's trying to hope the Seahawks have maybe another bad week at left tackle, and he's still hanging around, or his agent wants him to stick around. I don't know. I can't put my finger on this one.
Just following up on what you're saying, Jeff. I don't understand why he's staying in Seattle.
That's what I can't figure out.
Like I understand like ongoing negotiations, but I mean, New York was interested too, right? So why wouldn't he be flying over there? You know.
And by the way, that's not Evan growling at you. He just has some animated friends. Yeah. So I guess I don't think it's that much of a mystery. The way I see it is Albert's in town. They worked him out. The Seahawks have shown some interest. Apparently, there's been an offer made. I think that's still debatable whether that's true. I think there's a lot of stuff that could be coming from an agent, because the places where that's coming from are the same tweets that say Albert's got a deal or has been offered a deal, hasn't come to terms, and he's leaving town. Those haven't been right. He hasn't been leaving town. So to assume they're also right about them offering a deal may not be true. Mm-hmm. So I continue to think that the Seahawks have their eye on a better player than Brandon Albert. And they've got a couple things going on. Dwayne Brown has got some time frame, a deadline, whether it's this week or next week. Here, I'm hearing different things from John Clayton and other people about when this true deadline is for his to have to report in order to get a year accrued on his contract. That's going to be a deadline. That's going to force some action for the Texans. I think the Seahawks are waiting to see if they can get the right deal for Dwayne Brown. The other thing going on there is the October 31st trade deadline. So, those are two timeframes that are coming up. I think the Seahawks have basically said, hold on, we're working on some things, and if it doesn't work out, you're our first choice. And if that's the case, they'll sign him. I mean, I think the whole New York thing is a total crock. The Giants are 1-5. They're not needing to sign free agent like tackles who want to make anything over the veteran minimum. They've got Eric Flowers, who's terrible, and I don't think he's going to get any better. And they just moved Pugh out to right tackle, who played really well against Von Miller. So yeah, I think he has no other interest. And I think Seahawks fans should take that into account as well. Everyone's on the Brandon Albert train other than maybe me. Like, I'd be fine with him because I think he's better than Reese. But understand the Seahawks don't have enough cap space to be getting more than one guy. And if Albert's the guy, that's it. And so I would much rather they keep their powder dry and try to get someone who actually could make a difference. Get me a Dwayne Brown. Get me a Joe Staley. Someone of that caliber. Staley's an interesting one. I don't think they'll be able to get him because I don't think they have what San Francisco wants. But he's got a really interesting contract affordability-wise. The next couple of years, I think it's in the $8 or $9 million range. Like he's signed a very team-friendly. This year it's kind of a camel contract. It's got a hump in the middle, and then it gets lower as the years go on. So anyway, I think there's mention thing there. What about this Martavis Bryant thing? I got to start by just saying I don't get it. Why? Why does anyone want another receiver? We can't block well enough to throw to the ones we've got. We've made two, in my mind, horrible trades for skill position players, gave up draft capital to bring in these skill position players, and don't have the line to protect to throw it to them. Like, why do we want another disgruntled skill position player? Help me, guys.
Yeah, I have one question to follow up on that, and it's a question for both of you. Do either of you completely trust the Seahawks offensive coaching staff and the Seahawks offense, so including players, obviously, to effectively utilize a very talented offensive weapon? Do either of you have complete confidence in that?
No, not completely.
No, absolutely not.
And that's my point. He's not worth it. I like Brian has stated from the beginning, we need to invest in Russell's protection. I'm confident in his weapons. It's his protection that we need to address.
This is just part of being a sports fan. Unfortunately, I covered sports, pro sports, and Toronto and baseball and hockey. And anytime a player comes out on a rumor, no matter what team you're a fan of or what you're covering, the fans' first reaction is our team should get that guy. Seahawks fans are super guilty of this, just like everyone else. It happens in every sport I've ever covered. They see the rumor Martavis Bryant's unhappy, their brain clicks. Oh, we need a big receiver. They completely forget the Jimmy Graham thing. They completely forget Percy Harvin. And all logic goes out the window. They just think, oh, our team should get this guy. And the realistic fans, probably more like you two, realize it's not a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, there's some. I don't want to imply that folks that are interested in this trade are crazy because I think that he's a good, potentially great receiver. He's on. I think it's still his rookie deal. And
hold on, did you just see what Softy just tweeted?
No.
What?
Softy just tweeted he's hearing that Brandon Albert is not signing with anyone. He's going to retire.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
Did you guys just see that?
Oh, let me look it up. You mean he's going to retire again? Yeah. Not signing with you.
My God.
Yeah, well.
Wow. I think Evan's reaction there says it all.
Well, there goes your leverage for any conversations with the Texans. The Texans are licking their chops right now. Look,
we should have known when he was out in front of Wingstop. We should have known he was retiring. We should have known. It was a clue.
Guys, I consider it a blessing. This is a guy that can't decide if he wants to play football. He's retired, unretired, and retired all within the span of a few months. I don't know that that's the guy that you want to be counting on to block a key player at a key moment and be preparing like crazy to get ready for the next week and giving his best effort. So, I think this is a blessing in disguise. If this guy isn't sure that he loves football and wants to play football, I don't think you want him on the team.
It's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, but like you said, though, that leverage with the Dwayne Brown talks or really talks with anybody kind of goes out the window.
Yeah. Well, so now everyone's asking about Reese and what this means on the offensive line, right? Let's play the game for a second where there is no change, that nobody gets brought in. And that's probably, to be honest, the most likely situation, right? Like, trades are hard.
Yeah.
Do you think that they stick with Reese? Do you think that they start working to bring someone else in off of the bench?
Specifically at left tackle?
Yes.
I don't know who you'd put out there. Is Tobin the second option? Is that who his backup is?
Tobin and Isaiah Battle.
We haven't seen anything from them. What do you think, Jeff?
I think they're going to keep riding Reese Odiambo. I think Tom Cable took a couple kind of digs at Reese this week, saying that like the rest of the line has kind of started to figure things out and kind of said they're waiting for that left tackle position to get better. But I don't think Matt Tobin or Battle right now are ready to play. And as bad as Odiambo's been, I think he's our guy right now, unfortunately.
Hey, well, you know what? Let's stop talking about our left tackle for a second and welcome, thankfully, a much brighter face and more exciting topic of conversation. Warren Sharp of Sharp Football Stats as our guest tonight. And Warren, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. I have to admit, like I was busting your chops about this on Twitter a few months ago, but I almost wanted to ask you if your collarbone's healing, because first I saw, is like, is that Aaron Rodgers' brother, or are they related somehow? And I think you said that other people have made that comment as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess it's the mustache, but I've literally never heard that before until this year. I started doing a lot of Monday Night Football pregame shows, and out of the woodwork, everybody's comparing me to him. So I don't see the resemblance, but collarbone, and if I could be half as good as he is at analytics, that he is as good as at playing football, then I'll take it.
Well, there's definitely worse guys to be compared to. I mean, it's not like we're comparing you to the Seahawks opposing quarterback this week, Eli Manning, who, I don't think you'd want that. But so I don't know that a lot of people are familiar with your work. Obviously, we're huge fans of what you do and what you've brought to, you know, kind of the quantitative analysis of what's going on in the football field that kind of unveils some things that our eyes aren't going to catch on their own. But tell us a little bit about you. Tell the folks that are listening how you got started and what you do on your site.
Yeah, so I guess I went to school, top 10 engineering school, got my degree in civil engineering, started working as an engineering consultant, got my PE license after 4 years in the field, and was doing that route. That was kind of my one profession. But then my other profession, my hobby was I loved watching NFL, and I got into that at a very early age. And I loved starting maybe like just after I got out of high school, betting on the games. And I kind of put 2 and 2 together when I was in college and wrote some computer models to try to help predict the outcomes of the games. And I worked on that for 4 years, the whole time I was in school, which I was actually in for 5 years. But for those 5 years, I was working on that. Came out of school, kind of had a really good model that was working. So I was betting on the game, sharing some of that information. And then I kind of guys out in Las Vegas with some of my records and how well I was doing. So started working with some of the syndicate groups out there, some of the more well-known sports bettors who are betting larger volumes of money on the game. So my performance was solid enough that they brought me sort of into their circle. Got a lot of good contacts and connections through them. But the whole time, you know, I was looking at the landscape of sports betting, and it's really very hollow. There's really not a whole lot of people like me in that field who are like quantitative analysts, like guys who at least you don't see them. You know, there are guys who work for the groups behind the scenes off the screen, but nobody sees them. But I kind of like giving back to people, sharing information. And, you know, I obviously gravitated towards like Football Outsiders and Pro Football Focus and some of those analytical sites, but I didn't quite find enough. The information like is easily accessible, you know, play-by-play information. How can we break this down? How can we slice it and dice it to get more, I guess, deeper into some of the stats and do some things that I wanted to do that really weren't being done by some of those sites. So that's where the kind of the sharpfootballstats.com came from. That's what was developed from, was my desire to take it to the next level and do something that I didn't feel we could get from the other sites. And obviously, you know, some of those sites started charging money, more exorbitant amounts. And, you know, that's why I made my site completely free. I just wanted, you know, to get this information out there, to have it available for people to access for free. So I've done tons of different regression analyses on, you know, different analytics, which ones I favor, which ones I don't. I watch all the games. I go back and rewatch some on film, but I mean, I'm in my theater here. I have, you know, TVs all over the place, including the big one that I can throw up all the games on. And I'm literally, because that's one edge I think that guys who bet on sports have, is because I might be betting on, you know, 5 different games concurrently. I've gotten really good at, you know, multitasking and jumping from game to game and trying to watch every single snap and really being integrated into that. I think fantasy has helped allow people to do that as well. But yeah, I think that there's a different edge when you're betting on these games and you have a lot to ride on each result. So I just love it. I love football. I love analytics, and this is a perfect marriage, I think, between them.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So without giving away any trade secrets that I'm sure you don't want to or can't, it occurs to me that you've probably got a pretty good idea of like the key elements that give one team an advantage over another. You know, can you share some insights or pick some insights that you could share that fans might be able to learn from?
Yeah, I think the most obvious one, and this is one that I do talk publicly about. I mean, obviously, as you kind of alluded to, there are probably some that I won't be as eager to talk about, but this one is really, this is the crux of everything, in my opinion. It's completely the opposite way that we really analyze. You see the graphics pop up. What does the team do on third down? Well, this team's gone, you know, is 4 of 11, and this team is 6 of 9. So, you know, look at this one team; they're doing so much better on third down. But the reality is, games are won or lost on first and second down. If you get to third down, to me, that's a loss. Just getting to third down. In the NFL, it's about bypassing third downs. It's about being efficient on first and second down. And so a few years ago, I created a metric I call early down success rate. And basically, it looks at a team's ability to bypass third downs on offense or to force opponents into third downs on defense. And I did tons of regression analysis on this, and I found that it was actually, not only was it to wins than any other metric out there apart from turnovers, but unlike turnovers, you can actually model this predictively as well. So I built models to help model early down success rate predictively based on year-to-date metrics and strength of schedule from early down success rate and opponents that the team is going up against. But it really is, I think people get carried away too much by a couple things that they've just been ingrained with from all the, the talking heads that they see commenting on these games, at 1 p.m., 4 p.m. Eastern, that are just talking about, well, it's second and short, so it's great time for a shot play. Well, they've got 3 downs here. It's 4 down territory. I'm okay with like 4th downs. I think teams don't go for it enough. That's where all of the metrics kind of boil down to. Like a lot of the analytics stuff is like, well, what should a team do on 4th down? Well, if you're getting to 4th down, there's very few times that a team would actually be in a situation where they legitimately should be going for it. So having that be like the biggest discussion for analytics in football is kind of to like a very small corner of the room. First and second down is much more prevalent. And so I found that it's extremely useful. If people are watching games, if people are paying attention, when they flash up those graphics, don't look at what a team is in terms of how many third downs they've converted. Compare the 2 teams in terms of how many third downs they've had to attempt. If one team's attempted 16, the other team's attempted 7, guess what? You could be 2 of 7 on third down, and the other team could be 10 of 16. I'm guessing that the team that's been 2 of 7 on third down is probably doing just as well in that game as the team that's, had a higher percentage, but has been going into third down almost every single time that, multiple times in a game. And Seattle was a perfect example. Your guys' defense, I mean, it's not quite where it once was, as I'm sure you know, but that defense used to be so difficult for teams to matriculate the ball down the field and score. And that's why they needed these chunk plays, because the odds of a team being able to convert a couple 2 to 3 third downs on a drive against your defense is going to be very difficult to do. That's why these teams needed to avoid those third downs and get some chunk plays in their drives in order to have success against your team.
So you talked about, it's all over your site, sharpfootballstats.com, correct?
Right.
Success, and you talked about early down success being key. What constitutes success from an analytics standpoint on first down or second down?
Okay, so on first down, basically you're looking to gain 40% of the yards to go. And one of the reasons why I love success rate more so than yards per carry, yards per pass, yards per play, those types of metrics, is because success rate adjusts for down and distance. You could have a 1st and 10 penalty, right? So it sets a holding penalty. It sets you up for 1st and 20. First down, you might have a nice 5-yard gain. Well, that doesn't really help when you're in 2nd and 15, like it would if you were in 2nd and 5. So that penalty has really screwed you up. It's going to be more difficult for you to be successful on that first down, which is why success rate is a perfect metric in my mind, because it's binomial. It's 1 or 0. Either you were or you were not successful on that play. And the gauge is how many yards to go and what down is it. So 40% on first down, 60% on second down of the yards to go, and then see 3rd or 4th down, do you gain a first down or not? So I've incorporated a ton of success rate into this, but then I also realized that there was another key metric that I love. While I love success rate, another metric that is being left out, captured by yards per play, yards per carry, yards per pass, that is not if you're just looking at success rate, and that's what happens on the unsuccessful plays. Is an unsuccessful play gaining no yards? Or let's say you needed to gain 6 yards on a play for it to be graded as successful, because let's say you get 0 yards on first down. So that second down play has got to get 6 yards and set you up on schedule for third and medium, 3rd and short. if your second down play gains no yards, if your second down play gains 5 yards, it's also graded out as unsuccessful. But it's a massive edge to convert a 3rd and 5 as opposed to a 3rd and 10. So I created a metric called missed yards per attempt, which looks at only the plays that are unsuccessful. How close do you get to being successful? So in that example I just gave, in one play you missed it by 1 yard. You gained 5, you needed 6. In another play, you missed it by 6 yards. You gained nothing and you needed 6. So I look at those metrics as well on the site. And I think that's kind of the other side of the coin. It's not quite as success rate, but it's still a big factor in calculating efficiency.
So I'm gonna let the other guys jump in here in a second. I could definitely talk to you for hours, but I'm curious. You look at the game differently than I think the average fan, obviously, than the average fan. And do you, though, have favorite players? Do you have favorite teams? Does the game still have that kind of meaning to you, or is it simply a game of strategy and analytics that you're trying to break down?
Yeah, it really has become I'm a fan of efficiency. I'm a fan of good football. Good football, not meaning necessarily just high scoring, wild football, but just efficient play calling. And I've got a lot more into the play calling and decision making side of things, which is why I've got a pretty neat page on the website which looks at play calling analytics, and it tracks what teams do the most often in certain downs and distances, and then what plays are the most successful in downs and distances. And you can compare the two to see, well, as a team, like the San Diego Chargers, they're calling like 66 first down runs to Melvin Gordon, and he's like 25% success rate. Whereas like they throw the ball to Hunter Henry on 1st and 10, and it's like hitting at a 60% success rate. Why are they force feeding Melvin Gordon in such inefficiency and setting them up for 2nd and long almost every single time? So I built that, but I'm a big fan of wherever it comes, and therefore I've become a fan of coaches. But the interesting part with that is, I'm sure you guys know, you can have great coaches who typically are on the right side of decisions and make opportune decisions that screw things up in a certain game plan, in a certain situation. I mean, you guys remember when you guys went out into New England, what was it, last year, I think, and New England was coming off of a bye, and they just had this obnoxious game plan that was just completely baffling, and you guys knifed through their defense. And you even see a team like New England, they say they don't use the analytics, but they really do. And their coach is so intelligent when it comes to making the right decisions that he might not need analytics to tell him something, but he already is kind of in that direction. He's on that ship anyways. He's just not at the steering wheel with a computer of analytics spitting things out to him. But even they make bad decisions. I could tell you, I don't know, it's hard to talk to people who are so knowledgeable about a team like you guys are with the Seahawks, but from afar, both literally and figuratively, Darrell Bevell kind of just really frustrates me at times.
That was my next question.
I asked you that question, so please preach on.
That was my question right there.
Put numbers behind what we see.
Well, I mean, the numbers, we could talk about like their play calling, and actually I'll bring up some stuff that I was pulling together for the show, some of the early down success rates, because I know that you guys, that's one of the metrics that I like to use. But before we get into that, I'll just say, like, in the red zone in particular, it gets extremely frustrating at some of the decisions that they make. And the problem is, this is a team that needs to cherish and value those red zone possessions. They cannot afford to have meaningless plays, especially in the red zone, plays that aren't optimal. And that's where I always try to look at things. It's like, what would be the optimal play call here? Now, you can't always, optimal play on 1st and 10 inside the red zone, because the defense would ultimately know your tendencies. So you do have to mix things up, but you have to attack weaknesses. I feel like too many teams do what we do, and the easiest path to victory is attacking that weakness of your opponent. And I've got a lot out of the old text, The Art of War, just a lot of the war theories that they bring about easiest path to victory, and don't go where the enemy thinks that you're going to be. You have to guys things, but you can't just resort to like these ludicrous trick plays that he sometimes calls up that just have zero. Let's get back into some real numbers because I know you want to hit that. So your guys, you actually right now rank as like the 30th team in early down success rate. It's pretty bad in terms of your metrics from that. And I'll tell you, you actually rank defensively, you rank 13th in the league, but offensively you rank 30th. And if you adjust for strength of schedule, you actually rank a little bit worse than that due to some of the opposition that you faced so far this year in terms of their offensive efficiency. You look at the Colts and the 49ers thrown in there, and the Titans are kind of a hit and miss team, obviously. But here's where your edges and your weaknesses are offensively, because that's the biggest problem area that you have right now. You rank 30th in rushing success rate on early downs. We're only talking early downs here, so any numbers I throw at you, just assume it's early downs.
The only
30th in rushing.
Warren, I got to interrupt you, is that we're not 32nd, but continue.
Yeah. Well, I will get to something where you are 32nd in 1 second. You rank 30th in rushing success and 11th in passing success. So like defense, you're much better at one side of the coin than the other side. You're better you're better defensively than offensively. You're better passing than rushing. You guys obviously know this. But the difference is the aggressiveness in nature between the first half and the second half. When you look at what they do in the first half, they rank dead last in rushing efficiency in terms of their early down success rate. Only 24% of your play calls in the first half when you run the ball on early downs are successful. But you rank in passing success rate, which is still not great, but it's 41% of your plays on early downs where you pass the ball are successful. So a significant increase over what you were because you're so far off the radar when you run the ball. Overall, though, in the first half, efficient, the worst early down success rate offense in the NFL. Everything changes at halftime, and I think you were asking me about this, and you probably have some research that you've done on this as well, but in the second half, your rushing success rate, your rank goes from 32nd to 17th. So you move from worst to the middle of the pack. You move from 24% up to 42%. So you nearly double your efficiency, the frequency of your run plays on early downs being successful in the second half as opposed to the first half. A slightly less increase, but still a massive increase when you're talking about your passing success rate. You move from 41% up to 58%. That takes you from 28th in the first half up to second best in the NFL in the second half. Overall, in the second half on early downs, you guys are the 7th best team in the NFL. So what does that tell us? That tells us that you guys are being in my opinion, you guys are being too conservative in the first half with some of your play calls on early downs. And it's causing problems, therefore executing whatever you're trying to do on third downs. It's putting you in bad situations. You're behind the chains on third down, making it more difficult to perform. So I don't know what types of, if this is jiving at all with some of your opinions, but whatsoever, that your performances are in the second half on early downs, where you're the 7th best, including the 2nd best when you pass, are massive. And in addition, my recommendation would be to try to pass the ball a little bit more often, especially now that Chris Carson is out. You guys have to better support the run game by opening things up via the pass and then resorting to the run. A la sort of what, I always harken back to this because I remember it when I was first looking at analytics, but remember the days where Bill Cowher and the Pittsburgh Steelers, they had like one of the best defenses in the league, and they were this run team with Jerome Bettis, but you put them in the playoffs, all of a sudden they come out throwing the ball on you. And you're like, what the hell? And the defenses didn't know how to react, and then they had to start playing the pass, and then they would gash them with the run. You have to kind of switch some things up, and you can't get so conservative early on.
I have to I really keep wanting to hand it off. Jeff and Evan, please jump in here. But because you just brought that up, I'm going to write an article on this, so I'll share more later. But you talked about that you feel like the team's too conservative early on, and that's what the metrics are showing, not passing the ball early enough. Well, I picked up on something Pete Carroll said at a press conference or on one show he was on after a recent game, that on the road, they like to early in the game go for explosive plays. And then I watched the Rams game and watched them in the first quarter throw a bunch of like deep balls that were not connecting. And then in the second quarter, they started on their touchdown drive, connecting on a lot of intermediate throws and getting some rhythm. And it just, for me, felt like one of those Pete moments where he has this tendency to really try to go for it in odd situations. And this idea that needs to get explosive plays early on the road seemed counter to how the team's built and what they're capable of. So I used your site, Warren, and thank you for adding some different splits that allowed me to do this. But interestingly enough, it's not just that they are too conservative in terms of run to pass ratio, which I think is part of what you're getting at. It's that when they do pass on the road this year, or in the first quarter, 34% of their pass attempts on the road in the first quarter are over 15 yards. So they are going for it early on the road. And you know how many points they've scored on the road in the first quarter this year? 0. 0 points on the road in the first quarter this year. But you start getting on later in the game, second quarter, 16% of pass attempts are over 15 yards. They score 6.7 points on the road in the second quarter. Third quarter, 8% are over 15 yards. They score 4.3. So they have this weird thing. And if you flip it and you go home, the home follows a totally different path. But setting that aside, there seems to be this combination of what you're talking about, which is maybe they're trying to run too often. They're not passing often enough. And then also when they do pass, they're going for low percentage passes early on that aren't necessarily going to work out. And so it feels like there's this clear sign pointing to make some, intermediate to short passes that can help you move the ball and help you gain some yards. That seems to be when this offense is at its best. And for whatever reason, they're not doing that early in games.
Yeah, well, I definitely, this is something that I think has become a little bit more prevalent this season. I've noticed it starting with that very first game, the New England Patriots, when they hosted the Chiefs, where they have this really efficient offense. I know they don't have Julian Edelman anymore, obviously. We all know that. They know that. But they just keep going deep. They just keep obnoxiously chucking the ball deep, and it's setting them up for these bad situations. And I'm not even a baseball fan. I know we've got the championship series now and that sort of thing. And, but Bill James and sabermetrics and whatnot is, to me, you have to – explosiveness is important. Why is explosiveness important? Because I love early down success rate. And why do I love those? It's because it avoids third downs. What happens when you gain a 30-yard pass play? You're avoiding potentially 3 different times that you may have to go to third down in between where you are and where you end up. So a chunk play, an explosive play, does help your overall performance because it's bypassing some of those third downs. But you cannot go so explosive that you're sacrificing performance on those early downs. And I don't know if the strategy there is they don't have as much faith in their want to pick up chunks and let the defense push the defense back off, from crowding the box. But there's other ways that accomplish without throwing low percentage passes into the mix. And so what you're telling me, very ironic, because so often what teams will try to do, especially when they're on the road, is get a quarterback into rhythm, establish some type of a rhythm with easier completions. Now, Russell Wilson, extremely talented. You don't necessarily need to, just like with Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, like work this guy into a rhythm. But it is a little interesting how I've noticed several teams this year really try to go deep and get very explosive. And there must be some work that they've been doing that talks about the importance of explosive plays. And I firmly believe that there is a correlation with explosiveness and success. But the key is you have to hit those plays. You can't be 1 for 10 on explosive passes and say, hey, well, we're at least trying to be explosive. You have to hit them at a certain rate in order for it to help you win. And if you're not, then you're not helping yourself win.
Evan, any questions you have for Warren? I know, Warren, we've kept you for a little while. You stick around for a couple more questions.
Yeah.
This is a little off topic, but what's your favorite stat to analyze quarterbacks? And there's a lot of talk about different, QBR, passer rating, all this type of stuff. But what's your take on your favorite way to evaluate quarterbacks from a statistical point of view?
Great question. I really do like QBR, but obviously without being able to calculate, it's like a proprietary metric. I've kind of steered away from utilizing it quite as much, although I feel like if you're somebody on the outside just looking at stats is not a bad metric. I used to be very, very anti-QBR back in the day when they first came out with it. I was definitely in that corner. Like, they invented this stat that has like grading incorporated into it, and it could be very subjective, and especially when they first started it. But I kind of feel now like there's been probably a bit of standardization amongst how they're grading things, and so it's probably improved in its utility when it first started. Personally, I still look at yards per pass attempt. Football has been inundated to an extreme with fantasy, and so the projected points and the points per attempt and things of that nature that get ingrained into just any discussion about football really kind of led that direction by what they do with fantasy and daily fantasy and all the fantasy analysts out there. And so an overemphasis does naturally seep into touchdown rates and touchdown performance and things like that. I think it's important. One thing that I value, though, I value first down passing, first down efficiency. I do value what is a player's passer rating on those deep targets, because that takes into account efficiency as well as touchdown production and things of that nature. So, yards in the air, average yards in the air is important as well. It's a little bit harder to obtain as quickly as you may want it, though. But I don't really peg that as one, something that you have to pigeonhole. I like looking at a lot of different things, including success rate as it relates to passing.
One of the folks that's watching I think they're joking, obviously, but I'm curious. They want you to be our new offensive coordinator for the Seahawks, by the way. Do you have an end game in mind of where this could be, like a vision of where you could end up? Is it continuing down this analytics path and just sharing this stuff with the world as you've been doing? Is it eventually working for a team? Is it working in Vegas? Is it being a coach? I mean, like, there's a bunch of different ways you could end up taking this. Do you have a dream around this?
My dream is just to keep getting better and keep doing more and more things all the time. So in terms of like the one idea of quote unquote taking it to Vegas, like I'm already pretty much doing that. At my Sharp Football Analysis website. So I have two sites. I've got my Sharp Football Stats website, which is all the free analytics and visualizations. And then we've got the Sharp Football Stats, sharpfootballanalysis.com, which is all my like in-season analysis and all my, I write for ESPN. I break down all the games for them, but that's behind, the ESPN chalk, and you have to pay for that insider and whatnot. But I mean, when I put out a game to clients, like if I put out over a total, that's what my specialty is. I do really well on sides too, but predicting how many total points will be scored using the analytics that I have. And then obviously Vegas puts up their numbers, 45 total points in this game. And I can project, my model says 49.5. So we're going to bet the over at this rate. And when we put the games out, when it sits at 45, we'll move to 46 and 46.5. And it'll move a 1.5 to 2 points within, within a few seconds it starts, and then it'll move a couple points within a few minutes at times, depending on how strong of a recommendation it is. So we're already, infiltrated that market. I know a lot of the sportsbook managers out there, and they're familiar with me and my success and that sort of thing. So that's not what I would be aspiring to, because I'm already pretty good there. What I'd be aspiring to is to infiltrate this into the actual play calling that occurs in the NFL, the actual decision making that occurs. And I've already reached, some teams I've been in communication with certain teams. There's a number of features on the website that I have private that I don't really talk about much, but that I've built for some teams. But eventually, I don't know exactly where it would take me. The on-field product better, then I'll be happy, because I love watching football, and it frustrates me seeing things on TV that I completely disagree with, or hearing the announcers talking about things in a completely uneducated manner, as if they have no understanding about what they're trying to tell people. It's telling them the exact wrong thing. Like, if you could say what would be the most wrong thing to tell the viewers at this point in time, that's what they're telling them a lot of the time. So that's very frustrating. But I think some of the guys on your site who like play calling and want asking about the play calling, on the Sharp Football Stats website, go to the offense tab and scroll down to play frequency, and there's a tab there called play calling tendencies. Click that and you'll instantly get taken to team by team pages of, you can start manipulating different scenarios, different situations, what quarter is it, what some of the stuff that you were talking about, and see the play calling, see what they do most often, what they do most successfully. Everybody can get smarter. It doesn't just have to be me telling the teams. Like, everybody can have a better understanding. The guys who cover the sport, I get a lot of contact and interview requests and things like that from people who cover the teams for different papers or different TV stations and things like that. These guys are getting more intelligent about what they're choosing to ask the coaches sometimes. So I think overall, like, I'm pleased with the direction that this is heading. I'm a little bit disappointed with the lack of success that, like, a team that's so ingrained with the analytics, which is the Cleveland Browns, their front office is not really having a lot of success. So that's a little bit disheartening to me. But part of that is not their fault. Part of that is the coach's play calling and his decision making. I was tweeting about this, the Hugh Jackson's decision to not have his quarterbacks throw the ball to the short middle of the field. And if you follow that on Twitter, I apologize, but for 30 seconds, the most efficient place to throw the football for any quarterback is the short middle of the field. Since they implemented those rule changes that prevent the hits coming across the middle, that has become like a safe haven for players to be able to gain efficiency, and for quarterbacks as a very easy pass over the middle. Now, you might not have a clear throwing lane because of the angles and that sort of thing. You have to create some of that yourself. But if you look at passer rating or success rate of passes thrown to the short middle, it's more efficient and more successful than throwing to the left or to the right. But of course, Hugh Jackson, he's called 3% of his pass plays the last couple of weeks when Hogan was in there to the short middle. The NFL average is 20%. He's called 3%, and then he wonders why the quarterbacks aren't having much success, is because they're trying to fit these balls, 2 yards from the sideline with the receiver's arms hanging out over the sideline. And it's very difficult. These quarterbacks he has aren't Aaron Rodgers. They're not Tom Brady. They don't have laser-like precision down the field. Give them some choice routes over the middle or some running backs. Get some efficiency there. It's very frustrating. So it's not just the analytics front office. Sorry, complete tangent. But at any rate.
It's fast. Like I said, for me, I could definitely pick your brain about this, and I'd love to have you back on the show. If we can find another time to do it. It's interesting as you talk about the short middle. That just happens to be something that a lot of Seahawks fans know is not as available to the Seahawks offense, because Russell's on the shorter side and has a little trouble seeing that part of the field. So in general, the Seahawks don't attack the short middle as much. He likes deep middle, but struggles with that throw. So, Warren, I want to make sure I give you some of your time back. I know it's later your time. This was fantastic information. Tell folks where they can find you to learn more and find more of what you're doing.
Yeah, the easiest way, I mean, I always try to advise like the free sites. Twitter is the free site, obviously. I tweet tons of stuff out there. So that's at Sharp Football. That's my Twitter handle. Sharpfootballstats.com. That's my free stats website. Tons of useful information there. You can waste a whole day of work if you have a day to waste just going on there and checking everything out. And then sharpfootballanalysis.com is my in-season analysis site where I give out predictions and things like that to clients. So I try to give a lot of useful stuff at all three of those spots and stay in communication with people and try to help people learn about the game and share some information that I have.
You want to give us, before you leave, which way you're leaning on the Seahawks-Giants?
Mine has obviously come down a little bit. You know, you guys open as high as, I think it's 8 at one of the spots. Yeah, 6 and 7.5 at a couple of others. And it's dropped down a little bit. The Giants obviously played way over their heads. Now, we actually liked the Giants last week against Denver. They were catching way too many points there. So that was a good buy low opportunity. That's just, pure buying a team that everybody hates at the right time. And they were able to outperform that. I don't know. You guys now have seen a little bit. You have a little bit better edge than the Denver Broncos did from the perspective that they're not just switching up the play caller right before your game. They did it last week. So hopefully you guys have been in the lab figuring out some of the new tendencies and based on down and distance and things of that nature. But you guys going out on the road, fortunately, it is a late game, so it's not an early kickoff. So that's one thing that's going in your favor. You're favored by 5.5 now. I haven't done any hardcore projections on that game because nothing stood out to me yet in terms of performance. But I will say one thing that other teams should do, and I don't know that the Giants will do this enough because, I mean, this could be a game where the running backs out of the backfield come into play a little bit more. Teams only throw to their running backs against you guys 14% of the time. That's the least frequent league. But on average, those passes gain 6.1 yards per attempt. When teams target wide receivers against you, average 6.0 yards per attempt. You're the 4th best in the league at holding down the yards per attempt to wide receivers. So I think it's imperative. The Giants stopped running as much 11 personnel. They ran, like the highest amount in the league last year. I think it was like 93% 11 personnel last year. They've definitely decreased that. And I think it's in their best interest, especially with their injuries, to continue to decrease that, get a little bit more running back and tight end involvement defense, because it's going to be hard, those wide receivers that aren't as talented against your DBs. But I think it's going to be a pretty interesting game. I'm guessing that it's probably going to be a little bit lower scoring, but the line has been bet up a little bit. It actually opened, if you can believe it, 38.5 and is now sitting at 40.5 in terms of the total points that are being projected to be scored. That may not seem like enough. 41 is a pretty key number. So if this thing got up to 41, I would definitely expect some money to be bet in on the under pretty quickly. But I think the game's going to probably start off lower at a lower pace than what those lines currently are projecting. I think a first half under bet is probably in order if you can get anything better than 20. Those lines, unfortunately, aren't out yet because the sports books are really scared. I think it's obnoxious, but they won't post those until tomorrow mid-afternoon, East Coast time, right around noon or so. And those lines should be out now. If it was up to me, I would have them out now, and I've already placed a number of bets this week, but it's frustrating that they don't post those early enough. So that would be my projection. It would be a lower scoring first half.
Seems like that's a good bet based on what we've seen from the Seahawks on the road so far this year. So, Warren, thank you so much. Thanks for making this stuff available for all of us, and let's hope to have you back again soon.
Yeah, definitely. I think you guys got a good shot at making the postseason, especially now with Aaron Rodgers. So maybe we can link back up closer to that point in time.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
You too.
Wow. So that was a ton of mind-blowing info, right? I mean, the guy is smart beyond all get out. How many of you were hoping that one of the teams that he's in contact with was the Seahawks?
Seems like he can use an hour with Pete Carroll and Bevel and just like maybe pass along some new ideas, sit down with those guys.
I think Pete would love it, right?
I know. So give him an hour. He might talk for the full hour, but
exactly. Hey, while we were talking and listening to Warren, we've got our next guest who's also a member of the Hawk Blogger family now. William Cornell, welcome to the show, dude.
How's it going, guys?
Good. You may not be familiar to everybody listening, so if you can, do a quick intro about who you are and some of the cool stuff that you've been doing.
Name's William Cornell. I make the Rain City Redemption series, and met Evan a while ago through Twitter, and thus I've met Brian. So hello, everyone who isn't familiar.
What's up, dude?
What's up, man?
And before the Rain City Redemption series, you also made the Sonics stuff, right? Didn't you do something on the Sonics?
I didn't. I wish I could say I did. That was an awesome series.
Okay, got it. I don't know why I thought that, but I know Evan always is talking about the Sonics, so maybe I just assumed that they were.
You're talking about the Sonics Gate, right?
Yeah. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, it's an awesome documentary.
So,
Brian, let me interject real quick. While Warren was speaking, I want you to know I downed an entire box of this.
So I ordered you. You said you want a pepperoni Pagliacci pizza.
Yes.
Now Pagliacci does more than just pepperoni. They actually have two types of pepperoni.
Oh, really?
And so I got you one of each. Do you know which one you took?
It was spicy.
Yeah, it was spicy. There's one that was spicy. There's one that was normal. So
there's definitely the spicy one.
Yeah, I think it's like salumi or something. It was.
That's really good though.
Yeah, nice.
Completely gone.
Congratulations. Glad it made it. William, maybe you'll be next week. Jeff will be never unless he moves out here to Seattle.
I'm not against it.
So, William, you got some big news coming up on Friday, right? Tell folks about anyone that loves the Seahawks what you're going to be releasing.
So basically the way the episode started was I basically started out where I was going to do an episode per year, and I guess I just hoped that they would someday win a Super Bowl, and then of course they did. So that's kind of when the episode stopped. Unfortunately, when this series started, it was my first ever, it's my first ever video that I ever made. So I kind of struggled with it, and I always felt there was a need to go back and kind of revisit some of the story and make it higher quality. My last release I felt was kind of more up to par for where I am now as a video editor. And so basically I'm going back and remastering all the old episodes. And so the first episode remaster will be coming out on Friday, which I'm pretty excited about. So
for people that have seen it, even before we say that, not everybody knows the Rain City Redemption series. What is it? What did it capture? And now what's going to be added in the new version?
So essentially what it is it starts out with the end of the Holmgren era in Seattle and kind of picks up from where Pete Carroll starts. And the whole point of the series was kind of to encapsule the whole, change in culture and how they basically just became good, for lack of a better term. And it started with that first season. And what it is it's a documentary series that kind of goes in chronological order from the time Pete Carroll got here. And it's kind of designed to capture the emotional side of being a Seahawks fan, which I hear from people who watch it does a pretty good job. So that's kind of the long and short of it.
Evan, Jeff, items you want to ask William about before we get back to just general roundtable Seahawks talk?
Yeah. So, Will, you mentioned, I think maybe it was either via text or maybe you tweeted it or something like that. You added some parts, didn't you, in this remastered version? You didn't just make it high quality. You made it. There were some parts to the story that you felt like were, I think, left out in the first episode. So, if you want to tap on that and tell us, maybe give us some sneak peeks to what we can expect in the second round.
Sure. So looking back on that first episode, I really felt that I don't even think that it was so short that I don't think I did it justice, the whole story justice. I thought that Pete Carroll his background probably should have been a little bit more introduced and, properly. I thought Marshawn Lynch was something that I kind of skimmed over the first time around. So this one's going to focus a lot more on Pete Carroll's background at USC, how much he was doubted when he first entered the league. And it's also going to really go into Marshawn Lynch's background, which I thought was, again, really missing from that first one. So those are really the two differences. And then, of course, I put a little more emphasis on John Schneider for you. And now it's like it's your number one guy. So it's just a little bit more fine-tuned in story from beginning to end.
So what I'm trying to say is everyone who's listening, the whole Hawk Blogger team, we all better have some PTO ready for Friday because this is going to be like a weekend marathon type thing.
Well, we'll see. It's a little shorter than the others. Some of the more recent ones have run for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. This one's only about 55 minutes, but the original ran for around 37 minutes. So there's a lot of extra footage, about 20 minutes or so.
Cool.
When is this going to drop?
It's going to drop on Friday. For you guys, I'll hopefully have a link up tonight, so you guys will get the sneak peek release, so to speak. But yeah, it's supposed to drop on Friday. I'm really excited about it.
Cool. Well, dealer's choice, William. And you prefer William or Will?
Will.
Will. All right, I got William on my screen, so I'll call you.
Either one's working.
We've already talked a little bit about the left tackle position. We've talked a little bit about Cliff Avril retiring, or not necessarily retiring, but Cliff Avril going on IR and potentially retiring. What's on your mind when it comes to Seahawks that we should talk about here?
Not so much the Seahawks. I think right now I'm kind of enjoying the fact that it's really an 8-8 league so far. And, of course, I don't know if that's how it's going to play out. But right now, especially when you include the Aaron Rodgers injury, it seems that the NFC is wide open, actually the whole league for that matter. So if you guys want to go into that, I'm ready for it.
Yeah, actually, one thing that just kind of strikes me and one thing we haven't talked about is the Falcons look bad. Like, did you guys see the Dolphins game this past weekend?
Yes. Yeah, I did.
Oh my gosh! I guess they're collapsing leads like they've been known to do, but it's just not looking good.
Ooh. Okay, I had a feeling this was going to happen this year, and if you looked at Matt Ryan's career numbers and kind of just the way they've looked throughout his whole career, last year was a real outlier, and a big part of that to me was Kyle Shanahan. Mm-hmm. And Kyle Shanahan, even if you watch San Francisco with a team with inferior talent, he is such a good play caller and such a good play designer. And if you look at a lot of the plays last year, they had guys wide open. I remember that Seattle playoff game. They had guys streaking down the field, whether it was the running backs and the receivers. And this isn't a knock on Steve Sarkisian. You just put an average offensive coordinator on that team. They're not the same. And the defense has gone actually better. And they've just come back to normal. And without Kyle Shanahan running that offense, they're not a Super Bowl team, and this is kind of what Matt Ryan and they've been pretty much throughout his career.
I gotta admit, it surprised me. I knew that I agree with everything you just said, Jeff, and I was tweeting out about that a little bit this week. Looking at Ryan, I've got in arguments with friends after many drinks before Seahawks games about Matt Ryan. Before, I've always thought he is a franchise QB, an MVP level QB. And when I was saying that was like 3 years ago, and they thought I was nuts. Like, he never will be that level. And so I was forcing a lot of crow down people's throats last year when he was doing what he was doing. And when I looked at the numbers, I was shocked to see how average, he's above average, but he's basically an above average quarterback in general, other than 2 years in his career. Happens to be 2 years the Seahawks have played them in the playoffs, but setting that aside, I think play calling has a lot to do with it, and it surprises me given the offensive talent they've got on that team. You can go on and on. I mean, people talk about Julio Jones and Devonta Freeman and Matt Ryan, but I even think guys like Mohamed Sanu and Taylor Gabriel and Tevin Coleman, like, you can go on down the line. They got a lot of ammunition. You'd think that any play caller that's in the NFL could be pretty consistently good with them. I heard a comment as early as I think it was this morning. I was on John Clayton's show that he's hearing that defensive players feel like they know what's coming, that they can predict what's coming with the Falcons offense. And if true, that is a fireable offense in the NFL. And when you're losing to the Bills at home, by my metrics, the Bills are the best defense in the NFL right now. So I kind of understood how that could maybe surprise them. Coming off a bye week and losing to the Dolphins after being ahead 17-0 at halftime, that's another thing entirely. So I'm not writing them off just yet, but I think that whole NFC South, is that right?
Yeah.
Carolina, New Orleans, which is a sneaky good team, guys. They're number 4 in my power rankings. And I don't do them myself. They're just analytics based. Carolina, Atlanta, New Orleans, and even Tampa Bay, I think they're going to beat up on each other. I don't think you're going to get a number 1 seed out of that division this year.
Well, how much of the Atlanta struggles this year do you think have to do with that Super Bowl hangover, kind of like we experienced after the 2013 season? Because I got to say, I kind of predicted a little bit that they would kind of fall a little bit, at least from where they were last year, just based on how they lost that Super Bowl. So how much do you think kind of plays into that at all?
It's funny that even having gone through it, it doesn't. I don't factor that in. To me, that feels like something that we as fans probably would think about. But like when the Seahawks had it, there was some pretty clear divisions in the locker room between players and between players and coaches. Like there was a lot of finger pointing about that Pete Carroll wanted Russell Wilson to win the MVP, and that's why he had him throw the pass. There was, players that were fighting amongst themselves about that. There was Pete Carroll, who I still to this day believe was covering for Darrell Bevell. I think he threw himself in front of the bus. I think that was absolutely Bevell's decision, and Pete would never let one of his coaches take the fall for that. So I think there's a lot that was going on there, where it came down to really one decision in the end that I don't think really applies to the Falcons. That was a total team-wide collapse, and I don't think there was one place. So I guess for me that isn't the reason, but maybe it is. Maybe there's more to it than I'm giving it credit for.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I think there is a part that's definitely a part of it. It's really hard to get. It's so hard to get to the Super Bowl, and kind of when they should have won that game. They stopped running the ball, but again, I think it comes down to they don't have right now. They have no kind of identity on offense, and we've talked about it with Seattle a bunch. And last year they did all those motions, and they had all those crazy formations, and I know it's crazy. Just Shanahan's so good at those motions and scheming guys open. Something we talk about Bevel all the time. And they're just Julio Jones is banged up. Sanu is out right now. They don't have that go-to guy in the passing game, and they're not running the ball as efficiently as they did last year. So they just look like a different team.
Yeah, and we're also comparing it to like an insane year by them in 20. Yeah. It's such an outlier year that it's like they were like one of the best. I don't know, like from a statistic point of view, but they had to have been like one of the best offenses like we've ever seen. They were insane. So, they're just falling back down to earth a little bit. I'm trying to think of what other teams have kind of been shockingly bad. Cowboys are looking rough.
Yeah.
Obviously with the Zeke stuff, kind of like I feel like I passed the bar exam.
Worst story.
Oh, he's in, he's out, he's in. Like, oh my God. But I mean, I guess if you're a Seahawks fan, now they've got the 14-day restraining order, so he's going to play for at least the next 2 weeks. I think that gets close to where he's going to miss the Seahawks game if they get reinstated. So, there might be some bright light there, and we can talk about some of the other teams, and that's fine. Obviously, the Packers are down. I think the Vikings are a team to watch. If Teddy Bridgewater really is coming back, that defense is fantastic, and they don't need a lot. It was a huge loss to Dalvin Cook. That was a big deal, but that's a team. I think the Eagles, I don't know. I'm having a hard time feeling like the Eagles are as great as everyone says. I will tell you, when I look at their schedule, there's a really decent shot they come into CenturyLink Field 10-1 when we face them. They have a pretty straightforward path the next few weeks, depending on how things go. That's a team that can definitely be hard to catch just from a schedule standpoint.
Who's their one loss to?
Say that again?
Who's their one loss to?
The Chiefs.
On the road.
Andy Reid knows that team. He knows Doug Peterson. He trained Doug Peterson. He knows them inside and out. Same scheme, a lot of his old holdovers. So,
but they
also
go ahead.
Do you guys still see the Seahawks as a team you can see getting a bye, first round bye?
Oh yeah, especially and don't get me wrong, I'm always optimistic about this stuff, but I'm telling you, the Rodgers injury has a huge impact. Like, obviously, we're not rooting for him to get injured, or we're not happy that he's injured, but at the end of the day, it completely changes the playoff landscape. Like I am deathly afraid of going to Lambeau and playing a playoff game there. Screw that. I do not want to go to Lambeau. So I think it's a game changer, and I think we're absolutely a team that can still secure that first round bye. And my opinion is, if they really want to make the Super Bowl, they have to clinch that first round bye. It's hard for me to see this team going to an away field and playing like via wild card or something. So yeah, I think they can. It's just a matter of how far our offensive line takes us.
Yeah, that's not who this team is now. They are not a bye week team now. I 100% agree with Evan that they're in position like they can be, but it's going to take, like, this is the visual I've got in my mind is anyone that saw, what was that movie 2012 with John Cusack and all the a million times where the world is falling apart and they take off on a plane just before the world falls apart underneath them. Feels like we're on the runway and the ground's, almost to the wheels. Like, it's almost going to just totally be. I look at the Giants at 1-5 and I say, that could be us. Like we're not that far from that. Even when I'm breaking down the team, like, great defense, troubled offense, there's a lot of things that we need. But if they can catch, if they can find a rhythm, and especially if they can get a damn left tackle, like if they can just lock down that one position, then yeah, the whole thing's for the taking. Forget the NFC. If the Seahawks can become a top 12 offense, and I know everyone's like, oh, that's crazy. They're not that far off from doing that. If you look at some of the numbers, then they'll win the Super Bowl. Setting other things aside, and look at we haven't talked about, and people are interested. You've got Deshaun Shedd, who's coming back. You might have Dion Jordan coming back. None of us know who he is, on the football field and what he's going to be like. And then, are you a Duck fan?
Oh yeah.
And then there's the super duper wild card. So I would call Shedd like minor puzzle piece, maybe allows them to move Jeremy Lane. You've got Dion Jordan, who's a legitimate wild card, top, what was he, number 2 overall pick or number 3 overall pick, something like that. Granted, in a bad draft, but he's a wild card enough. He could have helped the pass rush. And then you got the super duper wild card, which is, does Malik McDowell actually make it back? Like, we were talking about this guy never playing again, and all signs I was getting from inside that team and outside the team was tragedy. Sorry, he's never playing again. Now he's cleared for, conditioning, and he's on the field, like, watching practice. And all we know is he had a serious concussion. So, like, if that guy comes back and that's probably super unlikely, but that could totally change the face of the team.
Yeah, from a very selfish cap perspective, and maybe these two situations are completely, irrelevant to each other, but I really, 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 really want to see something from Malik. I want to see what he looks like on the field before we have to make a decision on Sheldon. Sheldon is going to cost so much money to keep around, and maybe John and Pete traded for him knowing that they were going to, commit to an extension to him regardless. So, but he's going to command some serious money, and I just wish and I pray and I hope that we get to see a little bit of Malik before the season is ended. So.
Agreed. And what if he's able to come back and he's just a world beater? Just comes out, no one really believes him, and he just kicks ass.
Then maybe you keep Malik and you also pay Sheldon, and you have one badass defensive line, and maybe you let some defenders in the Legion leave. I don't know. Who knows?
If that happens, you're gonna have another video to make. Well,
absolutely, and I'll be happy to do it too.
I gotta ask, what's with this 2 left guard thing? Like, why are they going with 2 players at left guard? What the hell is that?
I think I've got a beat on that one.
Yeah, okay. Can you please explain this to me? Because no other team in the league does this.
Yes. So for folks that haven't been paying as insanely close attention as all of us do, like Seahawks announced yesterday, all right, Luke Jokel out for not the week that everyone was saying. I was trying to tell people, I think this is going to be longer. It's 4 to 5 weeks. He was arguably their most consistent lineman this season, especially after week 1. So it's a big, big loss. And now they came out and said, hey, we're going to have an open competition at left guard between Posick and Mark Lewinsky. And here's what I think is going on. I think that they're going on the road. First road start for a rookie is start on the road is not the easiest thing to do. To start on the road against Damon Snacks Harrison, not an easy thing to do. And start on the road as a rookie against Harrison and a Spagnuolo defense that has some pretty creative blitzes that they come out, and I think communication and experience matters. I think they feel like maybe that's not the best way for Posick to get his feet wet, and I think they want to give him a little bit more time to kind of get started. I think they want Posick to be the starter. I'm pretty sure about that. I think that they're having Glowinski. He'll probably get in there, and then they're going to rotate in Posick. Both Tom Cable and Pete Carroll said that both players were going to play. And if Posick does well, I think he just stays in. I don't think it's a continual rotation. I think Glowinski starts, they stick in Posick for a series, and if it's not an abject disaster, I think they leave Posick in.
So, question: is left guard what's the long-term goal with Posick? Or how do you say his name?
Posick. I've got confirmation. Yes, Posick.
You don't want me to pull McAvoy this week. I've heard left tackle. I've heard left guard. I've heard center. I've heard right guard. I've heard right tackle for this guy. What does anybody have a read on where this team wants to use him long term, or is it just kind of like whenever a starter falls down that they insert him? Or do they have any real plans for this guy?
It's got to be right guard, I would think, because Affetti's been pretty decent at right tackle. That was the initial position we kind of envisioned him for.
Yeah.
Left guard, it could be one of the guard spots. I don't see him as a left tackle. Center's locked in with Britt. Ibushi's probably a 1-year stopgap unless they sign him on the cheap. Given all the people they have to sign, it's hard to imagine they bring him back. So I think it's right guard, but who knows what happens with Jokel now? It could be left guard.
Well, yeah. Let's take a second and sorry, Evan, and sorry, John Schneider, because I'm a huge fan. But the Jokel contract, every one of us saw that and said that's a mistake. Every one of us. $8 million with 7.25 guaranteed. How can you give it to a guy that's never done it well in the NFL and who's coming off not just an ACL? He had ACL, MCL, and PCL surgery, and you give him 7.25 guaranteed. Guys, we're not able to replace Reese Odiombo in part because we've got guaranteed money going to a guy in Luke Jokel who should have had incentive-based contract based on the number of games played and on health, and the contract wasn't built that way. So that money's already gone. I mean, it should have been half of that should have been available. $3 million that should be available for us to go use to acquire a player that we don't have. So just if we're being honest, seeing both sides of this, it's a freaking another big miss by the front office when it comes to how to address the offensive line. And I've talked to Davis and others about we should extend Jokel. He's played well. I'm not interested. Like, he has played well. You know, maybe it's just me being skittish about knees, but I mean, I would rather the team spend money elsewhere on someone else the other way I look at it is spend $1 million of that dollars on TJ Lang and we would have a guard right now, like, potentially. So, like, I just think that was a huge, huge mistake on offensive line and free agency again. And then as far as Postic goes, yeah, I think they weren't sure that they were going to sign Britt. I think that they weren't convinced that that was the direction they were going to go, and they did it. And so now they're triaging, and they believe he can play at any of those positions. I don't think he's a left tackle. I don't think they believe he's a left tackle. He's definitely not going to be right tackle because Ifedi's, solidifying there. So I think right guard's a good guess. And, he also has value as a backup at all those positions, especially center. If Britt were to ever go down, he's a legitimate player there. So second round pick, again, my concern there was always that's a high draft pick to spend on somebody that you don't know exactly how you want to use and where his long-term fit is. There were some great secondary players that were available, some great other players that were available at that pick that I hope that we don't look back and wish that we had.
So just to clarify on the Jokel contract, Brian, I got to go to war with you a little bit on this.
Yes, bring it.
Of course.
How can you say, Brian, that Luke Jokel is, argued to be one of the most consistent offensive linemen for the Seahawks, probably top two, right next to Britt, I think you would agree with. How can you say that contract was a mistake if he's been one of our most consistent offensive linemen? Obviously the knee cleanup thing is an issue. Now, do we know if that cleanup was to be expected entering the season? Was that on the radar or was that unexpected?
So so this is the way I'd look at it. If you're a general manager and you're signing any player coming off a major reconstructive knee surgery of all three major ligaments, do you give him all the money guaranteed, or do you do an incentive-based contract based on games played? I don't care what position, who they are. Like, that's got to be the baseline. Set aside everything else.
But this is the problem with that perspective is I think that's in like an idealistic kind of like worldview. I think like I don't think that's what the market would have catered to. I think he would have gotten a better deal somewhere else. I think if Seattle offered him an incentive-based deal, they probably did offer him that initially, and I'm sure he got a better offer somewhere else. I mean,
so let's play this out a little bit. So let's say you're right, and I don't necessarily think you're wrong. So he gets a better offer somewhere else. He goes somewhere else. He's someone else's problem for 5 weeks while he's getting this reconstructive surgery. The Seahawks have $8 million in cap room that they're spending somewhere else on someone else. Do you think we'd be in a better position right now or a worse position?
$8 million on someone else?
Yes.
I don't think we're in a better position.
Yeah, I mean, it is obviously like we get to play this game.
And let me tell you why. Because they spent $4 to $5 million on Eddie Lacy. Like,
that's the hindsight one. You combine Jokel and Lacy, that's a lot of money you could have spent on a tackle.
Like I'm not super okay. I freaking love you, John Schneider, but the past couple of years have been a little sketchy in terms of free agent moves.
Marcus Webb.
Yeah, exactly. Like Bradley Sowell, even like the Jermaine Kearse extension was a little interesting. Even I mean, I was a little back to
for me. John Ryan, throw that in there as well.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I know people don't like it when I say it, but the John Ryan extension, I think that's a questionable. He's a mediocre punter by almost every metric.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The past couple of years have been just a little shady in terms of their, and we're working from hindsight here, but I mean, their free agent acquisitions recently haven't been super reliable.
Put it lightly.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that there's a decent chance that the money would have been better spent somewhere else. I think that even though Jokel has been one of the more consistent players, he hasn't been good. This is not a player that's been good. I think when you look at the Seahawks line, there's very few of those guys that have been good. Honestly, I mean, Britt's been pretty consistent and overall is probably the highest rated. Effetti's coming on strong. I mean, that's another thing that I looked at this week. He's one of only 2 tackles in the NFL that has over 200 pass rush snaps that hasn't given up a sack, and the other one's Joe Thomas.
I cannot believe we're using him in the same sentence. I know you're right. It's just crazy.
No, I mean, right? I mean, he's going against Jason Pierre-Paul this week.
No, it's awesome. It's
a great measure, and who knows? Maybe it's just because Reese is letting everyone get to Russell before Effetti's time can. I don't know, but yeah, I guess I'm just saying with the Joe piece, I felt like that was something I could see coming, and I'm not nearly as good at being a general manager as John Schneider, and never will be. I mean, he is so smart and looks so far ahead. I just don't get it. I don't get it, and even if the market wasn't bearing it, I don't get it. And it feels like this was bound to happen. So I'm not happy it happened. I'm frustrated, obviously, but I hope that when they go into the offseason next year, God, like, let them walk, let them walk and spend the money elsewhere, use it in a trade for Dwayne Brown. There's a million places you could end up using that stuff, but
yeah. I guess this is my question for you. Where would you have rather spent the $8 million? Is it just on a different offensive line player or a different position group, or?
Well, I preferred Riley Reif from the beginning.
Oh, got it.
And I don't know what he ended up going for. I'd have to look it up. It wasn't necessarily crazy out of range. And if not that, then again, I think TJ Lang would have been someone I would have wanted to spend more money on. And I know he's had some injury issues, but they weren't predictable injury issues. And he was one of the highest rated offensive guards, up until his injury. So
is Reif playing left tackle or right tackle for the Vikings?
Left.
Okay.
He's a left tackle.
So he signed a 5-year, $58 million. So he's just under like 12, 11 million a year or something like that. So
yeah.
I mean, you combine Lacey and you combine Jokel, you could have gotten Reif. So
yeah, it's not like a position that they've really neglected, right? Because that seems to be kind of the popular narrative, that they've neglected that position altogether, and they've spent a lot of high draft value. They've obviously spent money in free agency. I don't know that they've really neglected it. I think it's more of an evaluation thing, isn't it, at this point?
You know what makes it worse? Russell Okung is playing incredible this year.
Oh,
of course he is.
Maybe he's having his best season since 2012 when he was like a dominant Pro Bowl player.
Yeah.
It could have been nice to have $12 million on him or something, right?
It would have. I can make people feel a little bit better on that. From everything I've heard, that wasn't an option. Like,
no,
he was really he was in the Brandon Albert range of, it was really unclear whether he really loved football anymore and how much he was going to stick around and play. I think he was way more interested in the idea of the business side of negotiating his own contracts and doing that than he was about the football stuff. And so, I mean, I don't think people should underestimate how much the Seahawks care about that aspect of player evaluation. How much does the player love the game? And I don't think him coming back at any price was probably really an option, whether people want to hear that or not. But for me,
tough.
It makes it a little less painful.
Yeah, no, I find that really interesting, just because looking back on the contract that the Broncos signed him to was just absolutely ridiculous. I remember it was like 5 years. I think it was 5 years, $53 million, but it was a first year with $5 million, like zero guaranteed. And then it was like a 4-year team option by the Broncos, where it was then like a $12 million APY type of deal or something. So I guess that makes sense, Brian, from a football motivation type of perspective.
Yeah. Well, listen, fellas, this has been great. And Will, good to have you aboard. We're going to definitely look forward to checking out you. So on Twitter, you're at Rain City Series. Is that right?
That's right.
They can find we'll definitely post it on Hawk Blogger, so they'll be able to get it on the site there. And then your site is it raincityseries.com?
Yes, actually, just brand new. Someone ended up buying Rain City Redemption and selling it for $2,000. I just they're not getting any of my money, so I changed it up. Going with raincityseries.com.
Nice, good for you.
Yep.
Don't give them any money.
No, I'm not getting them anything.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, folks. Great show tonight. Please, if you haven't already, click subscribe so you get notified when the next show is getting ready. And we've got some other good guests lined up for next week as well. And it'll be an interesting game. We didn't talk a lot about the Seahawks against the Giants. It's an interesting matchup. I think it's going to be a close game, closer than people want it to be. Put your hand over the record. Respect the talent the Giants have on defense and the trouble the Seahawks have on offense. Expect it to be close, but the Seahawks should have an edge in this one. So, Jeff, Evan, Will, thank you all very much, and have a great rest of your night.
You guys.
Yep.
See you next week.